the Executive Director at the ACLU of Arizona. Thank you all for being here today and for joining us for this intimate conversation with two amazing, inspirational leaders in our LGBT community, Monica Jones and Laverne Cox, who you'll get to meet in a few minutes. So we will, first of all, I just want to thank the Dick Bowers, the President and CEO of the Herberger Theater, for their generous support of today's event. Woo! Yes. Beautiful space today, and I also want to thank a special shout out for Mary Stevens, who's with a group called Performance in the Borderlands, who's really connected us and made this event possible. She connected us with the Herberger Theater. I also want to thank the sex worker. Yes. And I also want to thank our co-sponsors, the Sex Worker Outreach Project, who you'll meet and get to hear from a little bit later on today. So just very quickly, a couple of quick housekeeping duties. We could do photos, please. We encourage you to take photos. We just ask that you don't do any flash. So you'll have to kind of figure out how that's going to work. And we would encourage you to use social media and use the hashtag #StandWithMonica. I mean, that's the one that we've really been promoting. I just want to quickly say that the ACLU, I'm extremely proud of the ACLU's work over the past few years on behalf of the LGBT community. And to quote an amazing, groundbreaking LGBT icon, Laverne Cox, who said, I'm particularly proud of the ACLU's work in making sure that the T is not silent in LGBT. And our work over the past few years, our work on behalf of the transgender community has really made an impact. You all remember last year the horrible bill that was introduced by the Arizona legislature that made it illegal for you to use a public restroom that was not associated with your gender at birth. We mobilized people across the state to fight back against that bill, and it was killed. It was the I'd like permission from the state to go potty please bill that was ultimately killed by the state legislature. The ACLU of Arizona also ended up working with the emergency homeless shelter here. The CAST shelter had a policy of not allowing people to be placed and receive emergency services in the homeless shelter based on their gender identity, and we were able to change that policy. We worked after hundreds and hundreds of interviews with immigrants in detention. We told the stories of transgender women who were humiliated, sexually assaulted, and have been harassed in immigration detention centers across the state. And so we're really proud of the work that we've been doing. We're here today, we're gathered here today because of a series of not just unfortunate events, but horrific events that have really impacted the trans community. And what you're going to hear today are some personal reflections from amazing women who have really push the boundaries and are paving the way for advocacy and fairness for the transgender community. So before I turn it over to our guest of honor, I wanted to introduce you to the man who is representing Monica Jones in her criminal appeal of the Walking While Trans charge. Monica is facing real-world implications and can face some serious jail time if her conviction is not overturned. And the attorney who's representing her is named Jay Caboo. He's with Perkins Coie. He's one of the best criminal defense attorneys in town, has appeared before the U.S. Supreme Court, appeals court the whole year.
Hey, thank you all so much for being here, and thanks to Alessandra and the ACLU. It's really an honor for me to be here. It's an honor for me and my firm to represent such a courageous woman as Monica. We spoke a little bit earlier today, and I won't bore everybody with the legal details about the brief we filed and the ACLU filed a brief in support of. But we're here because of a law that shouldn't be a law. Monica was convicted in a trial that didn't look like a trial that we recognize in this country, and she was convicted under a law that shouldn't be a law at all. Being who you are on your way out, being who you are on the way from your house, isn't against the law in this country. And a lot of people, I'd like to count myself as one of them, have spent a lot of time trying to make that the case. Hopefully, with the support of the people here and the support of the ACLU and some other folks, we will make sure that that's a reality for Monica, as well as for the people who can take inspiration from her and from her fight. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate the support of the community and the support of the organizations that have helped support us and help support our client in her fight to overturn her wrongful conviction. Thank you very much.
So now I'd like to introduce to you the moderator of the evening. Chase Strangio is joining us straight from New York. Chase is a staff attorney with the ACLU's Lesbian Gay Rights Project, and he has been involved in high-impact litigation on behalf of members of the LGBTQ community, and has been instrumental in really filing our amicus brief, which is the front of the court brief that we filed today on behalf of Monica Jones. And so I'd like for you to welcome Chase Strangio, who's going to be our moderator for this evening. I would like to, Monica Jones has been a hero, and she's an inspiration for me personally and professionally. Monica spoke today at the press conference and said that she's doing this and fighting this arrest and to overturn this law because she's doing this on behalf of women, and because she's doing this because she just wants to, she feels this is an unjust law and wants to fight it. And she is a sex worker advocate. She is a student at ASU and has had the courage to stand up and fight against these harmful and misguided public policies. And she is one of our featured speakers today, and this is why we're here on behalf of Monica Jones. So please join me in welcoming. Today the reporters asked Monica what inspires her to do and stand up to this, and what inspires her to fight this bill, and she said her family, and she said in particular Dad. So I just wanted a shout out here for Monica's family members who are here to support her. And finally, our Laverne Cox is here joining us today, an Emmy Award-winning and nominated actress who plays Sophia in the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. Really, Laverne has been a fierce and vocal advocate of social justice and transgender issues, and was on the cover of Time magazine. She is the first woman of color, trans woman of color, to be on a mainstream television program like Netflix's Orange is the New Black, and she has been really breaking new ground and has come here to Phoenix to support Monica and stand up for the repeal and overturning of this bill. So please join me in welcoming Laverne Cox today.
So, wow, thank you all for being here. Thank you to Monica and Laverne. So this is really, we're here for Monica. And so I wanted to give Monica the opportunity to just sort of, open it up and talk about some of the people who are important to her so that we can sort of ground ourselves in sort of what inspires Monica and draw inspiration from that.
Thank you, Chase. So I want to thank my aunt and my mom who are sitting right there. These women have been a pillar in my life. Like, my aunt helped raise me. My mom was a great mom. And those people right there, I love so much. And I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the person that I am if it wasn't for those two women right there. And my dad, who's right there taking pictures. Who, as a child, this is a story, I was playing with a Barbie doll torso, and he whooped me for playing with a Barbie doll torso, but at the end, when I came out, he was the first person that came to give me a hug. And he took me to get my back husband taken. So he was like a great person. But there's someone here that there's someone that's not here today, and that's my aunt, Delashawn. And that person, when I was growing up, I knew I had a transgender aunt, but never met this person until I was 18. This person grew up in the 50s, 60s as a trans woman. And so you can imagine what she had to go through. And when I was 18, she came from San Diego to Phoenix to visit my grandma. And she's getting out of the cab, and I had this big smile on my face. It was like, Grandma, that's your daughter. And my grandma said some things, and so it was nice. But but when I graduated high school, I went down to San Diego, and only thing I knew that she stayed at St. Vincent de Paul, and I walked all through downtown San Diego through the gaslight to go through St. Vincent de Paul, and by luck, she was walking out the building, and we had this amazing day together. And she came back, and I wish I would have spent a little bit more time with her and got the wisdom that she accumulated over the years. So but she passed away, and you don't know how much you need someone until they're gone. And I want to thank her for laying down the groundwork for me, because they're here today, and I would like to think it's because of her. So that's all I want to say about my
Thank you so much, Monica, and also thank you, Laverne. So I feel like one thing that we touched upon earlier today was the fact that both Monica and Laverne have had these platforms, and instead of just sort of taking the space for themselves, they've really used their voice to talk about the experiences of trans women of color and to sort of elevate the community. So drawing on what Monica said, Laverne, what are some of the things that inspire you, and why do you feel it's so important to sort of use your platform to talk about the community?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. I want to thank the ACLU and Monica's attorney and legal team for supporting her. I've said many times that loving trans women is a revolutionary act, and I've also quoted Cornel West, who says justice is what love looks like in public. And so it's so moving for me to arrive here in Phoenix and see so much love and support for this Black trans woman. So thank you everyone who's been loving and supporting. As you were sharing a bit of your story, I was so moved by how, I just met Monica for the first time today, and so I know you from social media, and I know from hearing your story in the press, but there's this profoundly human element to your story. Your family's here, and I think that is what we need to see more of when we tell trans stories, that this human component, that you are not this person that they want to profile you to make you as. You're really complicated, beautiful human being. But no, we can all see that. You've shared that with us very bravely. It's a lot of courage. Takes a lot of courage to not take a plea, which is what the criminal justice system wants us to do, to criminalize us. It takes a lot of courage not to take that plea and to go to trial, knowing that Black trans folks often don't get fair trials in this system, and it's so brave of you. So I'm inspired by you, and I wanted to be here today to support you and to say that to you, to your face. And also because I am shocked that there is not more attention on this case all over the country. I was, earlier this year, we all saw how the country mobilized, really, when SB 1062 was about to become law, right? The country mobilized LGBT organizations, mobilized businesses, mobilized that this law is unconstitutional, and we will withdraw our support from Arizona if we pass this law, and that made a difference, and the law was vetoed by your lovely daughter. Yeah. I don't come to you from New York and disparage your state. But girl. And there's this manifesting law that's on the books. You know, I'm shocked at how few people are talking about this, and I wonder if it's because we're not really valuing the lives of trans people, particularly trans women of color, enough in this country. And so then, when someone as beautiful as Monica is at the center of this, we act as if this is not an issue that we should care about. So I'm here to show that I do care. I mean, I feel like it's the very least I could do. And to hopefully raise attention and inspire people, hopefully around the country, to get involved in this case and to stand with Monica and support her.
Because you made it a little bit more easier to walk down the street because your face is on TV. Even though I get mistaken about you sometimes, but
it's funny, it's like people like, unfortunately, all black trans people do not look alike. And we're sitting right next to each other. I don't think we both are, doing our thing. We look alike, you know.
And so, to white people, we all look alike. But you made it a little bit more easier to walk down the street because your face is on TV, and so people recognize a trans woman, especially a trans woman of color, on TV. So when a trans woman of color walking down the street, it's a little bit more easier. So I can walk in my own skin with my head held high. And I just want to thank you for laying down that groundwork.
So Monica, throughout this case, I know one thing that you really sort of talked to me a lot about is how this law, really targets trans women of color, but it targets all women of color, and especially women living in poverty. So can you talk a little bit about sort of, why you feel it's so important to make those connections, and why you wanted to sort of make that the center of your conversation about what happened to you?
Yes, because we live in a world where people are multiple marginalized because being black, being Hispanic, being poor, living somewhere else. And so we have these marginalizations. And so these zoning laws where they are saying non-prostitute areas are in low-income areas. And so this affects women, especially women of color and women living in poverty because, like I said at the press conference, if I was a white woman walking in Arcadia, I would never have been stopped for manifestation. But since I'm a black trans woman who's hypersexualized and have this great sexual vibe about me, and I get it from my family, I get it from and a house full of women. But this law punished that, and this law punished women for having their own sexuality and having their own sexual being and being who they are. Because I have not yet heard of a heterosexual person being charged with manifestation. And so it especially targets women, but also trans women, because it creates a revolving door to the justice system, because most first charges are these manifestation charges. So when you get popped in, here you have this manifestation charge, and so you're going to get convicted of another charge. And so it lays the groundwork. And so it's not distributed justice. It's not equally distributed. The burden is placed on minorities here in
I
Trafficking.
think it's so important to note too that Monica is a student. She's doing what we all say that we're supposed to do in this country, that she's getting her education. She's trying to, better herself. And then she's just walking down the street, she has to deal with this. And there's the system that wants to make us disappear, that wants us not to exist. And that is what we're talking about here, I think.
Yes, and so for me, going to college, I want everyone to know I have a learning disability. I read at a third grade level, write at a third grade level. I never thought I would be at ASU in my final year getting my degree. Because I was overlooked in high school and throughout my life, overlooked for opportunities. And my mom, who's sitting right there, who overcame many things, when we were younger, I said, Mom, if I go to college, you have to go to college now. And so, Mama, now is your time to go to college.
Can I just say that, I think so often when we talk about trans stories, we talk about sort of the rejection of trans people by their families. And certainly that is a serious problem, but I think it also takes away from two things. One, all the people who have supported their families, like Monica, and two, it sort of takes away from us looking at the systems that are actually the problem. So I think, thank you, Monica, for talking about your family, and thank you for being here. I think it's important that we talk about the stories of love, because it's a lot easier to blame individuals than it is to blame systems. And I think, sharing these stories is super important. So
The systemic oppression, it can feel daunting, but I think we can begin to dismantle them in our individual lives every day, in the ways in which we communicate with each other, who we vote for, how we advocate and talk back to our leaders and representatives. And I want to note too that there's this misconception that Black folks are more transphobic and more homophobic than everybody else. And here we have this amazing Black family who is supporting their trans daughter, and I have an amazing Black family that supports me. Let's feel that right now.
yeah, and the white mainstream, LGBT movement has a lot of responsibility for sort of perpetuating that story. So I think, we should be conscious of that and sort of how we divide instead of, build love with each other. So I think, that is really important, and we all should be, take responsibility for the ways in which we perpetuate those narratives. So Laverne, in probably one of my favorite interviews I've ever seen in the New York Times, you did an interview in which I think you were asked a question that was something like, do you think it's really good for the trans community that the sort of the image that we see on TV for the first time is someone who's incarcerated? And I think you said something like, well, I'm not interested in this idea of good versus bad representation, and that we're all sort of nuanced, complicated human beings. And that really, I thought that was an amazing thing to say. So can you talk a little bit about sort of what it means to you to sort of play a character who is incarcerated, and sort of how we have conversations about the experiences of violence that trans people experience, have in the criminal justice system, particularly in prison and jail?
Gosh, that's all very complicated. In terms of I've always, and this honestly comes from Bell Hooks, one of my feminist idols, who, but Bell, in a lot of her analysis of pop culture, film, and television, she warned us in her work about getting into this dichotomy of positive versus negative representation. That really it is about diversity. It is about having diverse representation so that everybody's story is told. So we don't prioritize one story over another. And then I think when we get into this positive versus negative dichotomy, then we can lose the nuance of humanity. And as an artist, my job is to tell complicated truths, human truth. So that's what I'm interested in as an artist, and that's what I was talking about. I think playing, what's been so wonderful for me is getting to play this part it's a dream come true, and it's totally changed my life, and I love it artistically. But in terms of the ways in which I've gotten to advocate, it's a show that set in a women's prison. It's like inherently political, and so then I get to be myself in terms of how political I am, and I think I've said before that I don't think we can talk about America without we can't talk about America without talking about incarceration in prisons, because I think it tells us a lot about how we operate as a country and how we solve problems. Let's just lock people up, and let's lock up certain people who look a certain way. The very sort of new Jim Crow. That fantastic book. So this whole thing of making certain kinds of people disappear, and jails are about that. And so I think that if people can begin to think in those terms, we can. I love that the Obama administration is looking at ending mandatory minimums for drug charges. That we would lock up for 20, 30 years someone who's addicted to something. That we would criminalize marijuana, that we would criminalize sex work. It is just. It's disgusting to me. I'm trying to be diplomatic about it, but it's just gross. It's really, really gross, and it doesn't really. It's inhumane. There's something very inhumane about it, and so I think it's just. I often think that I really do believe that we can solve a lot of these problems with love, and not just love. We need public policy. We need to change hearts and minds. But how do we begin to love each other and not to view people who are different from us as the enemy? I mean, being here in Arizona, a lot of these laws are for people who are undocumented, undocumented residents too. These laws disproportionately affect them, and so it's just how do we stop looking at people who are different from us as the enemy? And there's this, it's all very complicated, so you can just talk about, because in your case, we're talking about white supremacy, we're talking about patriarchy, we're talking about classism, there's so many things with this manifestation law that are systemically problematic. So it's how do we begin to dismantle those systems in our daily lives, I think, because the systems are daunting. So I think, what can we do on a daily basis to live differently? To live differently and not perpetuate this stuff, and then take that to our communities and to our leaders and change stuff. And I think you're doing it,
I think Monica has the answer. Yeah, you're going to change that.
That was lots of Laverne words. So I think I got some of the question, but to talk about prison, and I know Laverne's character is in a women's prison, but that's not the case for many trans women out there, including myself. And I did a 15-day jail sentence in a men's facility, Lower Buckeye Jail, in isolation in a room by myself. Not because I did something wrong in the prison, it's because I was trans and I would have been at a greater risk from harm. And so there's something wrong there when trans women are forced to be in a men's prison to face extremely amounts of violence and harassment, not just by the inmates, but by the guards. And so it was a eye-opening experience going in and trying to get a bra. You got to get a nurse's permission to get a bra to wear in a men's prison. And like Cece says, there are things on commissary. Cece McDonald said, there are things on commissary as a trans woman that you want, but you ain't gonna get it. And so it's really hard being a trans woman and being in the system.
And I think, and I'm sure everyone here knows that, but I think just, you're taking on this risk to challenge this law, to go to trial, and you're risking going back to jail when possibly you could have avoided jail time if you had just taken a plea at the outset. And so you're standing up, for so many, or maybe not, But
I was, the plea was 30 days in jail, so there was no plea. It was like 30 days in jail. Say you're a whore and go on and do your jail time, and that was most women do and most trans women do, because they don't have like the backing of great people like SWAP and Laverne and the ACLU, and like my family gave me my voice to stick up for what's right, and so I have that in my corners, but most people don't, and so that's the reason why I'm here fighting.
So you started the night talking about your aunt and sort of the trans women of color who came before you and laid the groundwork, and I know that, you know, there's so many people in our community who are now committed to sort of telling the stories of Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, and so I was just wondering if Laverne, you could talk a little bit about, you know, why it's so important to sort of honor those histories and sort of talk and sort of think through the legacy of the trans folks who came before.
There's a brilliant blogger that a lot of you probably know named Monica Roberts, the trans griot, from .blogspot.com. Do we know Monica Roberts here? She talks a lot, more of you should know her. She talks a lot about how important it is for us, particularly as Black trans folks, to know our history, to know that we come from, you know, other trans folks who've accomplished things and who've fought for things, and so often that history is erased. And it's really deep to me, just as we celebrated the 45th anniversary of Stonewall, how many folks, I spoke at the Logo Trailblazer Awards. I can't even go into that. Anyway. I was very honored to be there. Wow. Funny. So anyway, but I talked about Sylvia Rivera, and I talked about how 41 years ago she had to fight her way to get onto the stage at the Pride rally that year, when she was one of the folks who started the Stonewall riots in 1969, and how she warned us against becoming a movement for white middle-class people. She warned us against that 41 years ago. And I also talked about how the patrons of Stonewall, when the Stonewall was raided, the patrons were lined up, and if you were not wearing 3 articles of clothing associated with the gender you were assigned at birth, you were arrested, because there were anti-cross-dressing laws at the time. There were so many people in the audience who didn't know that. And I was like, oh, you know, it's okay, but I was like, oh, that's like a major thing to me, a major part of why people were being arrested, that being trans was criminalized, right? And we see that being trans is still criminalized with laws like this. And so that if we don't know that, it's like there's so much of the full story that's not being told when we talk about something like Stonewall. And then people like Sylvia and Marsha, who were there, it was Marsha's birthday, their stories get erased, and that's really sad. And there's Sir Lady Java, who, do we know Sir Lady Java? Monica Roberts made me aware of her. She is this brilliant trans, she's still alive in Los Angeles. I met her last year at LA Trans Pride. But in the early 70s, she was a showgirl, beautiful, amazing showgirl. She performed with Red Fox, the comedian. And because of the anti-cross-dressing laws, her show was shut down. And she was like, I have to make a living. And she became an activist. And so she started protesting this law. And eventually it took a couple of years, but the law got overturned because of a technicality, administration's changed or whatever. But she was this, and there was something really empowering for me to find out about Sir Lady Java through Monica Roberts' blog, because I was like, oh, there's this legacy of this Black woman who's a performer who became an activist out of necessity. And me knowing that history of my history was really deeply empowering. And so when we know that, then we know that we've come from something. We've come from a long line of people who have fought and who in some cases have died and have sacrificed all kinds of things so that we can be here today enjoying some of the freedoms and continuing to fight for more of those freedoms.
And so, and for you, Monica, do you feel, are those stories, do they sort of carry you through your fight as well?
Yes, they do. So, at the, oh God, the name, the Desiree Alliance, the National Sex Worker Organization, we met in Vegas, and it was this big old fuss about Miss Major coming. So I was like, who is Miss Major? And somebody said, girl, you don't know who Miss Major, and they sat me down and schooled me about who is Miss Major and what she does for the trans community. And so she gets out there, this amazing woman, gray hair, and just talks about trans issues and sex worker rights issues and everything else. And that's my first time meeting somebody who's actually a trans activist who was involved with Stonewall. So it was like an amazing experience. And so I was lucky that my friend Leah Joe over there in the corner got me to go to the Bay Area to speak with Miss Major. And I had a lovely sit down talk with Miss Major, and it was so amazing.
Speaking about Ms. Major reminds me as well that there's all these black trans women who sort of were the leaders of the LGBT movement and sort of started it, but who were also leaders of many political movements. And Ms. Major was sort of at Attica prison in New York, and she was a leader there, challenging conditions of confinement in the prisons and part of the Attica prison uprisings. And so, I think it's also something that I've so appreciated about, the way you've connected all the issues is that there have been trans leaders in so many movements, not just in the LGBT movement, and that, such an important part of our history that's also
and when we just make things single issues, then we are missing the full picture. If we just focus on we can do that all day. It's not just about gender. It's about race, it's about class, it's about immigration status, it's about ability, it's about all of these intersecting oppressions and identities. So I love that you approach your activism that way.
And so, given sort of all these systemic issues, I know, Laverne, you talk about sort of love being something that is going to sort of guide us moving forward, and that really resonates for me. What are some other things that you think that, if we're calling on people to sort of stand up now, like how can we sort of make a better world to live in, other than sort of taking on the personal risk and making these challenges? What else should we be doing?
Well, I think a lot of times we're not even having the right conversations. So that how do we, because again, it's intersectionality, we all, even though there's more conversations happening about intersectionality in certain colleges and in certain circles, it doesn't always get to a policy standpoint, where when we make policy, we look at it from an intersectional standpoint. So I think that it's really important to have these conversations in a way where we look at multiple oppressions and how they affect certain people in certain ways. And then I think a lot of it's about education and us looking at our own fears. I feel like so much of the way, it's capitalism, it's so much stuff. But I think there's at the core of a lot of it is fear. A lot of it is fear of the unknown, fear of losing power. A lot of it is about it's a lot of the immigration issues and a lot of the racial stuff is so much about the demographic shifting in this country, and folks who have been in power for decades and centuries are like, oh my God, it's being threatened now. So what are we gonna do? And so they're doubling down in this really weird way because they're threatened. And it's like, how do we begin to not see each other as the enemy? But then it's unfortunately sometimes the other can treat. When the police are coming for you, it's like they can feel like the enemy if you're a person of color in this country, when the police are coming and profiling you and stopping and frisking you and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's so hard. It's really hard. And I wish I had all the answers, because I think if I live in New York and I'm just thinking about what's going on there with our new administration and our new mayor who ending stop and frisk was a huge issue for him, and the reason why he got elected, and we have citizens being choked you know, on the street, you know. It's like, what? There needs to be a revolution, a full systemic shift. And it's like, I'm wondering if there's been, you know, if all these police have been retrained, you know, because they've been in this other administration where we're stopping and frisking people, and they've been trained to like view certain bodies as like a risk. So maybe there's like we need to retrain our law enforcement officers. Because I don't want to think that the police are like a threat, and I don't want to believe that. But the evidence tells me something else.
It's there. And so let's look at this poster, this Swap Phoenix poster, and let's get real for a moment. And so me being a trans woman and being a former sex worker, that's why we're here. That's why I was arrested. And the issue is, why is it the best option for trans women to go into this line of work? And I was just thinking about it, and I was like, why was it the best option for me to go into this line of work? And I said, I could have had a job at the local convenience store, at Starbucks, but being there, my T would have been clocked. And if you don't know what T being clocked, that means they're calling me trans, or is that a man? And so why deal with that? And we're already hypersexualized, and especially if you're a black trans woman, you're hypersexualized in porn and media and everything else. And so it was, for me, it was the best option for me to get somewhere and for me to crawl to the top and to like thrive in this world. And I think that's the story for most trans women. It's the way to pay your rent, to live comfortable, to get your hormones, to get your breast augmentation, to get your gender reconsignment surgery, because the law says that in Arizona, to get your gender marker changed on your birth certificate, you have to have a cosmetic surgery. And so why is that the best option? Why is sex work the best option? And you just thinking, I want you guys to think for a moment, how many trans women you passed on the street and thought, what does she do for a living? Because up until Laverne, there was not really a trans woman on TV that someone can idolize and say, well, I can be that. It was, well, how I learned, it was going to a bar and they said, well, you need to turn dates to get your hormones, to get your laser hair removal, to get your clothes, to pay your rent. And so these, my friends and my sister, my trans sister, taught me the best way they know, and they were taught for someone else. And so it's passed down from generation and generation of trans women that men are going to use you for sex, so you better get your money. And so it's passed down, and we would like to think it's not true, but I had a lovely 2-year relationship, and I realized that it's not true. So I can be a woman, I can have the white picket fence, I can have the 3 kids running around. And so, but at the time, sex work, it was the best option. And then so after in school I was writing about decriminalizing sex work in my English papers and everything else. And at the time, I was the only person in my class writing these papers, and my human sexuality class for legalizing sex work. And I didn't know there was anybody out there until one day after my trial, I met this lovely lady, PJ Starr, who's a great activist, and got me in contact with Jacqueline, Leah Joe, and Swab, who got me into this sex worker activism. And that was the reason why I was out there protesting Project Rose, which is a collaboration of ASU, School of Social Work, and the Phoenix Police, and Catholic Charities here. So that was the reason why I was out there protesting, because there has to be a better way to treat sex workers. There has to be a better solution out there. And if we don't decriminalize it, legalize it, decriminalize it, or have better options out there.
Work. Thank you for talking about that, because that is keeping it really real. And I think too, I've always thought that a lot of we live as trans women, we live in a world where this has been my experience, that where for many years, I've walked down the street and been called a man and been told that I'm unattractive and ugly and all this stuff by society. And then there's all these men who want to sexualize me and objectify me. And I think that like in a world where you're told that you are nothing and then all of a sudden somebody wants to pay you some money to be with you, there's something very validating about that. And I think there's a survival piece to sex work, but I think there's also a validation piece to sex work. And I think it's like, how do we, so much of the journey for me has been about how do I love myself more, how do I value myself and believe I'm worthy. And I've often found myself in situations with men where it wasn't the best situation for me to be in, but there was validation there. And so I think that's another component to sex work that I think it's important to talk about, the psychological piece beyond just the survival. And survival is real, and people are in sex work for different reasons too. So there's not one monolithic story around sex work. Some people are obviously trafficked into it. But I think when we talk about thank you for doing it. Because when we talk about just some trans women and truly trans women of color's experience, I think we have to talk about sex work because it's a reality for far too many of us, and we have to talk about decriminalizing it. And then how our society is so hypocritical around how we consume pornography, for example, but then we stigmatize the sex workers.
Yes, it is. Yes, and so, but also these anti-trafficking laws are the reason why programs like Project Rose are popping up to get these monies and to get the money to go out there and rescue these sex workers who don't need their rescue. And so we often tie in trafficking, but people are being trafficked for many reasons, for domestic servitude to house cleaning, everything else, and for sex work too. But people are being trafficked across the world for multiple reasons, not just for sex. But these laws out there are targeting sex trafficking, but targeting the sex workers who are not trafficked. And so they come up with the broad laws that are like, oh, if someone gave me a ride to a client's house, they could be arrested for trafficking me to a client's house. So it's not just trafficking and sex trafficking, it's these laws that are affecting sex workers around the world.
And you sort of, what I'm gleaning from this too is this idea that we're dealing with sort of what we deem social problems by putting more and more money into prosecution, more and more money into the criminal justice system, and not into things like, for example, the fact that trans people can't get health care. And so we take away lots of things from people. We take away access to health care. We make immigration status increasingly difficult to access, and then we use the criminal justice system to deal with it. So here
we don't hire trans people to work in our companies.
Right. We don't. Yeah. Right. We don't hire trans people. We don't have laws to protect trans people. We incarcerate most communities of color in different ways and use police surveillance and so so in a state like Arizona, where we see sort of the intersection of immigration enforcement and police local law enforcement. One thing you talked about to me yesterday was sort of how these systems of power really pit marginalized communities. So what can we do to stop that, and how is that happening here?
See, because growing up, there was this predominant African American community, and then over time, Hispanic people came and hey, migrated and everything, and now these resources that the government put out there, like these entitlement programs, now everyone's pit against each other, like the Latin community and the Black community are going for these resources, and they're fighting for the same resources. And it's the way the government controls us, so we can't get together, we can't organize and say, you know what, these laws need to be changed and everything else, because we're still trying to fight to keep our lights on, we're still trying to fight to get food on the table. So that's what we're dealing here with in Arizona and around the country. So it's a great way to keep us divided.
It's like, I think our work is not to fall for it.
Yes.
Our work is not to, I mean, I think this is for communities of color. I think it's within the LGBT community. The infighting is like the way the system works to keep us down. It's like if they're fighting each other, we don't need to worry about them because they're not gonna fight. I'm talking about it. That can start anywhere. It needs to start within our own communities, where we're not fighting each other and we're figuring out ways, even when we don't agree, to maybe disagree, but to respect each other and to respect each other's rights to be who we are and not. I mean, I've just seen it. We've seen it too. It's a mess. It's a mess, and it really, that's how the system works to keep certain people down.
You know, one thing, this summer in this crisis in Detroit, oh, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
So like the only time I ever seen like the Latin community and the black community come together was nominating Obama, and I saw this big old movement of friends and people going out there and getting people signed up to vote, and that was the only time, and I was like, I hope this keeps on going, but then got him in office, and then we started fighting for the resources. And also to add on to like the justice system, when I was going through my trial here, and I went in front of the judge, it was set up so you could plead guilty. And I went to the judge and they said, are you gonna plead guilty? I said, no. She said, go to this courtroom. And so you go to this other courtroom. Then you talk to a prosecutor and see what they're gonna offer you. Then you go back to the judge, and then they send you upstairs to the lawyer's office. And so our system is set up where it's just so easy just to plead guilty, where you halfway through the thing, you say, I quit, I'm pleading guilty, let me get this over with, because it's so hard to go through this justice system. It chews you up and it spits you out. Even if you survive the justice system, you come out mangled still. And so that's what I want to let people know, that the justice system is not set up for people, innocent people. They always assume that you're guilty. And I know that they say proven innocent until guilty, but it's not.
I know that we're gonna move on to have questions, but is there anything that you either of you wanted to ask each other before we open it up to the audience?
I wanted to just say how brave I think you are to just sit here today and to have gone through and to continue to go through what you're going through for a greater good, for something that's bigger than you. And I said this today, and I believe that the work that you're doing is what it means to be a hero. I really do. So I thank you. Thank you.
I want to say I'm far from a hero, and I say those things for those people who run out and save people, firefighters and people, civilians that stop and to help people that are stuck on the freeway dying. And I say those heroes, but thank you for giving me that honor. But I want to ask you, when you have the whole weight of the trans community on your shoulder, how do you deal with it?
In a word.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I cry a lot, and I do. It gets really, honestly, to be perfectly honest, like I'm so happy to be here with you today, but I was just like, I'm tired of talking talking about trans people dealing with injustice, being arrested and being murdered and being beaten up and being raped. I am so tired of talking about this and like and be existing in a world that seems to not really care. It's wearing me out, honestly. It's wearing me out. And I often feel like there's not enough that I can do and I'm not doing enough. I really feel that a lot, that I'm not doing enough, that I should be doing more, that I need to be here and doing this. But I can't do it all. And so I have to pick my battles and I have to take care of myself. And it's a weird thing, the weight of because I can't take on that weight. That's really where I'm at now, that I have to take care of myself first, because I'm not going to be of use to anyone if I don't take care of myself. So and I'm also having to get really clear about what my lane is. Yes. That where can I be most effective? What am I here really to do? Yes. And so I have to say, being here was one of them for me. One of them. So.
So you can, what can people out here in the audience and media do to bring more attention to trans death and trans violence and transphobia?
I mean, we just need to cover it. We need to talk about it. It's like so much press just seems to like, no one cares. I'm like, I was thinking maybe if I'm here, I'm on a TV show, I'm nominated for an Emmy, maybe like news people cover this more. We need to cover it. We need to talk about it in the media, and we need to tell the human stories. And I think it's about humanizing us. I think it's about us being full human beings in representation. That is, and I think that's my lane. I think that is where I'm a storyteller. That's what I do as an actor. That's what I'm doing as a producer on a couple different projects. I've talked about your story a lot.
Yes.
I will continue to. So I think that's my lane, and we just have to keep going, and we have to like never give up. We just have to never give up, and I think it's about loving and respecting and valuing our own lives too. That it gets, because the system is not set up for us to love ourselves. It is not. This system is set up for us, for me, from very personal experiences. Like I would come home from being called a man, from being kicked on the street, from being like dealing with all the stuff that you deal with just leaving your house as a trans person, and feeling like nothing. And that like, but the feeling like I have a sense of self-worth, that I am worthy because I'm a child of God. That is the work on a daily basis. So I got to do all that stuff, or I'm not going to really be able to be of use to anybody. So
I'm just going to say one more thing. Just thinking about, I want to thank my cousin Miriam, because she is on point. When someone's talking about me, I don't even hear it, but she's on them, and so I want to thank her. So I just want to thank you, Miriam, so much.
So I'm getting a lot of these signs. So Leah over here is gonna take questions. We're gonna have 3 questions at a time, so folks can come down.
I have one question for Monica. Not really a question. I am an active sex worker. I am not Black. I am cis-presenting. However, I did grow up poor, and I did grow up disabled. So intersectionality affects people in different ways.
Yes.
And I want to let you know that Laverne is correct, and you are a hero. Shed that light on issues that matter for people who utilize sex work for whatever reason that they have, whether it be necessity or choice or convenience or what have you. Those are all valid reasons, and none of those should be criminalized, and you let us know that, and you remind me that I'm not a criminal by doing that. Laverne, when are you gonna play Wonder Woman?
Did you start that Tumblr? Oh my God, there's like so much Tumblr and tweeting about me as Wonder Woman. Thank you, I love Wonder Woman. Oh my God. That would be amazing. Somebody needs to offer, I'll go and audition. Like,
Hello, ladies. Excuse the lighting. I emerged from my coffin. I'm like part vampire. I'm not supposed to be in this lighting. First of all, Laverne, congratulations on your Emmy nomination. I would say win, but I think you're going to win. And if you don't, we'll form an angry mob later. So my question to you is, I hear constantly about how the transgender community is personally offended when a heterosexual cisgender male plays a trans female in Hollywood. How does it make you personally feel as a transgender actress? And could you find yourself playing those kind of roles like Jared Leto's role on the Dallas Buyers Club?
oh gosh. This is a complicated one. I'm an actor, and I before I knew I was trans, I was a performer as a kid, and I believe that actors, part of the reason we do what we do is so that we can play a wide range of characters. So I would never say to an actor that they shouldn't play a role. That's just not who I am. I do, and in my experience as a trans woman who plays a trans character on TV, I feel like that has been so transformative. I've been so blessed to travel all over the country and Canada, and met so many trans folks who've said that they've gotten inspiration because they're relating to this story, Sophia's story, and a trans person is playing it. And then people who are not trans, they're finding themselves having empathy, not only with its character, but with the trans actress who plays the character. And that's when social change happens. And all art is not about making social change, obviously, but I think it's really powerful for audiences when trans folks can play trans roles. So that's my very, I'd like to think nuance.
Hello, my name is Francisco Luna. I am a member of Advocacy's liberation team and also co-chair of Arizona Queer Undocumented Immigrant Project. And just kind of work sort of the intersectionality of being undocumented and also part of the LGBTQ community here in the state of Arizona, as well as national. And something that we wanted to talk about or wanted to make attention or bring awareness to was a transgender woman in Eloy Detention Center was recently raped, and there's all this situation happening where like the system is trying to cover it, and there's a lot of not a lot of attention to it. So we just wanted to bring that up front and also make the cordial invitation to see if you were willing to and also interested into finding out this case. Her name is Marie. And also,
how do you say her name? I tweeted the story earlier today. What's her name?
Marie Chui.
Marie Chui.
Right. So trans woman in Eloy, and currently the conditions in Eloy Detention Center is really it's really bad. There's a lot of There's a lot of policies that really quote unquote say that they're out there to protect. However, it's not the case. This woman was raped, and we were interested. We have some documentation if you're willing to look at that and just be more aware about the situation. But just for everybody here or for yourself as well to help us out, there is a petition out there. It's bit.ly/free Manichui. So yeah, just if that could be something that could happen.
Thank you.
So that was the first kind of round of 3. Are there any comments or responses that you all would like to say before we take the next few questions?
What was that for Chase or for me or Monica or all of us?
Sorry, it was for Laverne, but if it could be opened up to folks that could go, possibly go to Eloy Detention Center to visit my
Marichui.
Where exactly is it? It's
ACLU Detention Center is it's a for-profit detention center that seeks to criminalize undocumented folks, a lot of the undocumented queer community, and as well a lot of the transgender queer community many times is victims of abuse, whether it be sexually, physical, or the policies that are there, they really don't comply to them. So they're really victims 24/7 in ACLU Detention Center.
Thank you so much for sharing Marichui's story. I think one thing for me, and I know we have to move on to questions and nobody wants to hear from me, but one thing I'll say quickly is that I worked a long time on these regulations, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, implementing regulations, and DHS just came out with their regulations. And I think one thing that this highlights is that change through the law is incredibly limited, and that we can sort of have all sorts of policies in place, but all these systems are incredibly inherently violent, and that creating support networks that are separate and apart from the laws is so incredibly important, because people are not safe inside detention centers, people are not safe inside prisons and jails. And I know that Cece McDonald is such an inspiration, because so many times trans people are asked, well, do you want to be housed in the women's facility? And I think what Cece will say is there are no safe prisons. And I think that this is something that we take and that we should all take to heart, and really know that there are people dying inside detention facilities, and that we have an obligation to tell those stories and break down those walls. So thank you for being here and sharing that.
So we're going to take the next round of 3, and then you all can answer and respond to whatever you want.
Thank you, Laverne and Monica and Chase, for speaking. You guys have been great. I believe that we've been talking about it a little bit, how individual levels of accountability for revolutionary things that we're doing become difficult on a day-to-day. And I think about revolutionary works, and I remember looking back at the words of Martin Luther King and how "I have a dream" must have seemed so nebulous back then, and now we're seeing some of those things realized. And it's amazing that that transition can be so drastic, and a lot of it, to me, felt like we have a clear vision for it now in the future. So with all this difficulty that you have in stepping into your day-to-day and fighting and losing all these battles, do either of you have a vision of what you'd like to see in the next 20 years, something that we can all move forward to? I think it's a lot better to improvise through your day when you have a good vision in mind.
Should we do all 3 and then answer?
Yeah.
Do all 3.
Hi, my name is Ian, and my question is for Laverne, but since this whole event is about Monica, I just want to show some love first. And I just want to say thank you for not falling for the bullshit and fighting for this, and being so smart and educating us, this whole room of people, and for fighting for this. It just means it's so inspiring, and wow. But my question for Laverne is, as actors, obviously our sexuality informs our brand, and you go on a lot of talk shows and have interviews and stuff, and a lot of times the conversation is about asking you about being trans and talking about being trans. How do you feel about that being sort of your brand in these interviews and only talking about being trans? What are your thoughts on that, basically?
Work. Thank you.
Hi, how's it going? I just, first of all, just want to thank you guys for being here. I just think that it's amazing that we have voices, we have people here who support people that stand outside of the regular rainbow. The people who aren't as often noticed, and I think that's just a beautiful thing. So to build off of that and to build off of Monica's question earlier, and this is really well for you, by the way. My question is that now that gays and lesbians are becoming more noticed in today's society, and we're becoming more of a norm, what can we do as a people to more individually, more personally bring support and love to transgenders and people of the non-binary and non-cis? Just how can we bring people back up and bring people into the light?
Wait, a couple of those questions were for me. Okay, so the first one was about the vision for the future. I think that was for both of us. I think it relates to the last question too. A lot of my vision for the future is about gender self-determination. That we begin to create spaces in the world with our children and amongst each other where we don't make assumptions about people's gender. We allow individuals to define what it means to be a man or woman, binary, bi-gender, whatever, however you define your gender on your own terms. So I believe that is a huge part of what I'd like to see happen in the future. And I think that doesn't just affect trans people, I think it affects everybody. And so that's part of my vision for it. And part of my brand talking about being trans, part of the thing that I've realized as I do, as I become a media whore, you gotta talk about the Emmy nomination, you gotta campaign a little bit, is that a lot of people might see me on television and not know Orange Is the New Black. They might not know someone who's trans, and so they might be meeting me for the first time, and meeting someone trans for the first time when they see me on television. And so I don't often go in with that line of questioning, but on a show recently, I was retracing some, ground up cover before in interviews around my biography around being trans and stuff. And I think that's still necessary, unfortunately, because I would love all the change to happen right now. We'd be there'd be trans women, and trans folks in general playing a plethora of different characters on different TV shows, and there was all of us, and we'd be accepted, and there would be laws like this but we're not there. So these things are incremental. So I feel like I have to keep talking about that. But I think I'd like to think that I do a decent job of talking about being an actor and talking about other aspects of who I am beyond being trans, because there's a lot more to me. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff lately, I think, where I've been thinking where I want people to not just know me as a trans woman, but know my humorous side, or know these other things about who I am. So, yeah. And, what was the third question?
Non-binary.
Oh, what we can do, thank you, John. Yeah, I think it's about not making assumptions again about people's gender and allowing people to define themselves on their own terms, and creating space in our lives and as individuals, and then creating systemic space. So I speak at a lot of colleges and universities, so gender neutral bathrooms and gender neutral housing, and just allowing people to change their gender markers without going through all this kind of crazy rigmarole. Policy's gotten better in terms of that, and with state IDs, but with birth certificates it's not, and then you have inconsistencies. So the policy supports people defining themselves on their own terms.
And for me, I just feel like better services out there for trans people. Lower the cost of surgery and quit making millions of dollars off us, and better laws. And where there's a story where I had to fight to use the women's locker room at Phoenix Community College and Maricopa colleges, but I shouldn't have had to done that. And so better laws and better protection for trans people and genderqueer people. So that's what I hope for in 20 years.
Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel, and just a little some of who I am. I am an illegal immigrant and a homosexual. My question is, how can I create a systemic revolution or a human revolution to change the way that the world works? Because in this world where the justice system is unfair, discriminates based on your gender, color, or anything else, I just want to be able to become the leader where I can go and live with my family or marry the man of my dreams in the state that I live in. I want to be able to do anything possible without being discriminated or being pushed back or held back, because this just isn't working. And I want to be able to inspire people to be able to stand up with me. And I want to learn how to get one single person to stand by me and help me change or revolutionize this world. But I just don't know where to start. And my question is, how do I begin a revolution?
Hello, my name is Evan, and I just want to start by saying you guys are beautiful women and inspiration to me, and I'm sure to every single one of the people in this room. And I just want to thank you for that, first of all. And my question is for both of you, and it is, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it here. We're living in a world, it's 2014, and like you guys were saying, and I was also not aware of this, that trans people have been fighting for many, many years. How many more years are we gonna have to fight for your guys' rights and for all of our rights as people to make this world like just and just better? I love both of you.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann. I want to thank you all for your courage. Monica, you didn't know that you were going to be up here a few months ago, did you? So congratulations. And you filled the role nicely. And I want to thank Laverne, because before Orange is the New Black, there was a movie that she did called Carla. And actually, I'm on the film board for the Desperado LGBT Film Festival, and that was probably the best transgender film we ever featured.
Oh,
and,
thank you for showing it.
It's a story that is, I cried, I smiled, and you were wonderful, and you still carry a hammer in your purse?
That was the character.
And my question is, for Laverne, when was that movie shot? I know it was done in about 3 weeks. I talked to the director about that. And also, what were your feelings going from there to Orange is the New Black?
I'm so glad you saw Carla. I love that little movie. I wish like more people could see it. Carla, we shot that. I did. That was like a busy year for me. I did that movie in like May of 2011, and that was the second movie, independent film I did. It was right after Musical Chairs, this other film I did, and then the year I did like 7 independent films, and Musical Chairs is the only one that sort of got in distribution. But Carla, the character, she's a sex worker actually, and I played sex workers many times on film and on television, and I've always felt that, you know, that sex workers are people too. There's a lot of trans actors who wouldn't want to play someone who does sex work. I'm like, that's a reality of our community, and does the story humanize this sex work is the question that I always ask myself. But there was a woman, a friend of mine worked at this a bar that catered to trans women and their admirers. It's like not the way to say it, but that's how they advertise themselves. And my friend worked the door at the club, and I remember this was years ago, I went to visit her just to say hey, because the club was in my neighborhood, and she told me that a fight had broken out at the club. I should put this story in my book. She told me this fight had broken out at the club, and one of the girls had a hammer in her purse. And I was like, I just was like, that's kind of fabulous. And so when it came time when we were doing Carla with Ellie, the director, there was a scene where the 2 women get attacked by this guy, and my character was supposed to pull out a knife, and I was like, well, years ago, this girl at the club had a hammer. And I was like, I've been wanting, I'd done a student film at Columbia where I played a sex worker, and I just put a hammer in my purse. I never got to use it, but I was like, I felt like this character with a hammer in my purse. So I finally got to use the hammer. So the director loved it, and we ended up, there's in the trailer, you see me like pulling a hammer out of my purse. Anyway, there were two other questions too, right? What were they?
How do we start a revolution, and how much longer?
Your allies is your best revolution. On Twitter, Facebook, social media, and to go on to the part of being queer and being undocumented, I know there's like a great organization. I don't know if it's still there. My friend Ira can say Threadspace, is that, I'm saying it right? It's like an organization. Third Space, yes, thank you. So there's a great organization there that deals with being undocumented and being queer and joining those two communities together. So get in contact with those people because it's great, and I'm a big ally for you guys, and like just social media, Twitter it, and I will retweet it. So thank you guys.
And the revolution does not have to happen alone. What's great with what Monica's saying is that there's already people out there who are like-minded. It's about finding them and coming together.
Okay, so we only have 5 minutes left. So do you want to go get everyone's question and we'll answer them all? I mean, I won't answer any of them. So, but
Maybe could we just start with a couple and then see where we're at?
yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Ariana. My question is for Monica. It's about your end goal as far as the law and the legal system. Is your end goal to, after you've appealed, if that doesn't work, are you willing to keep appealing and take this all the way to the Supreme Court?
Yes, that's right. When he talked to me, he said, we're going to keep on fighting and keep on fighting. So thank you, Jay and Alexis and the ACLU. So good job.
So my name's Ira. My question is for both of you, but I have to shed some feels on Monica first, if y'all don't mind. Monica, you said earlier that you reserved the term hero for people who save people's lives, and you know me, I'm not one to tell people how to identify, because that'd be ironic. But what I can say is that in late 2011, I sat at a fundraiser for my surgery, awkwardly all by myself in a kissing booth that said $1. And you were the first person who came up to me, and I was terrified, not by you, but because I was in a kissing booth alone, surrounded by drunk people. And picked me up, because I'm little. And you kissed my cheek and you gave me a $20 bill. I'm not going to say that you saved my life that day, because I'd be alive, regardless. But I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be me at all without you, Monica. I got my T-shot today, they said it makes you cry faster.
Give you a hug, but I think it'll take too long to get But so me and Ira went to community college together, and he's like a phenomenal person, and I love Ira and I love you so much, and I know you go through a lot, and I just want to take the time to appreciate that what you're doing for young trans people at 1 in 10, and so I want to thank you.
Last time I saw you, I asked about how you deal with the black angry trans trope. And this time, I remember you. Yeah, we met at the GLAAD media training for trans people of color.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yes, you gave me a hug. I stood on the stage.
I knew it. You see, we met. Okay, cool.
But my question today is, because we were talking about infighting, but we were also talking about infighting amongst separate communities. But the reality is, as someone pointed out earlier, they're not very separate because of intersectionality.
Amen.
And just because someone identifies a certain way doesn't suddenly mean that they're critically conscious despite being an expert of lived experience. And so my question is, how do you work with folks in your own community who aren't necessarily critically conscious, who would probably say the same things that quote unquote oppressive people would say? How do you deal with that from a place of love in addition to a place of frustration? Because let's be real, it's frustrating.
Okay, then we're supposed to listen to all the other questions. So I have so much to say to that.
Really quick, unfortunately we are out of time and we absolutely need to respect the time for the space. So we're gonna hear your all's answer and then have a closing, and I'm so sorry to the rest of our questions. You can still speak right now, but just as far as we go in line.
Go for it, say it, girl.
I want Christine, who did my makeup, to speak. So, just like, excuse me, I'm sorry. I respect the time, but she's dead in line, and I just want her to answer her question, ask her question. So, can you please just give her a minute to answer that question?
They took the mic. Project, girl.
Project.
It's not so much a question, it's actually more of a kudos, because I am a trans woman of color, a former sex worker that has found my own way to better myself. And I come from a Jamaican background, which is a culture that does not embrace anything LGBT or Q or anything. Trans women are forced to live in sewers, in these ditches, in fear of being burned, shot, murdered in the street, public move. No one will do anything. And I am newly living my life in the open because I lived in so much fear. And in this community, a lot of the trans women weren't so friendly to me, but this woman has always been so nice to me. And she is just a really sweet woman, and she was just really embraced me. And I've seen how she interacts with the public, because I work for MAC, and she comes into my store. And the way she interacts with just the patrons is amazing. And she's such a beautiful soul, and I just want to say thank you so much for just being so kind to me. Truly an inspiration, because I didn't have a role model, I guess you could say, or a trans woman of color that was in the public light. I mean, there was a but she's not a trans woman. So I related to her in an aspect, but to you, I can relate to you and understand that you and I are one of the same. And I just want to congratulate you on all your success. And I thank you so much for living your life out loud. And just putting yourself out there for the public to see that, you know what, you don't have to be a sex worker. You can do other things, and you can be who you want to be, who you are genuinely, openly, and freely.
So there was the piece of when members of our community don't have critical consciousness, and how do we sort of deal with that? I think that there's this whole like meet people where they are thing, but I think that's the piece. I was tagged in some comments. Someone, a trans woman said some unfortunate things about me, and I was like, okay, well, it's a free country. She can say whatever she needs to say about me, and I can still love her. So we meet people where they are, and with love, I think we can maybe get people to different levels of consciousness. And then we might still disagree, but we can still love them. And I think the frustrating thing is like, if we can have conversations across difference with love and not attacking each other, I think that's a really nice place to start with all this stuff.
I know you guys came to see Laverne, so I'm just really glad that you
came to see you. Yeah.